In the autumn of 1628, a great Dutch ship named the Batavia pulls away from the port of Texel. It sails below, catching the cold wind, and its massive hull slices through the water. To the watching world, it's just another trade voyage, a long and dangerous journey from Europe to the East Indies, a normal risk for the time. But this ship carries more than just gold and jewels. It carries over 300 souls, and among them, a darkness is already stirring. Sailors, soldiers, merchants, women, and children are all packed together inside this floating wooden world, a prison they won't escape for months. Below deck, the air is thick with the smell of salt, sweat, and a growing sense of fear. Rats scurry in the shadows. Food begins to rot, and the water tastes stale. This vessel belongs to the Dutch East India Company, the most powerful corporation on earth. Its mission is clear: transport silver, gold, and precious gems to Indonesia and trade them for spices worth a fortune back home. Lives are gambled for profit. It has always been this way. The man in command is Captain Aryan Jacobs. He is an experienced, skilled sailor, but he is not the highest authority on board. That position belongs to a merchant named Jeronimus Cornelis. Cornelis is educated, well-spoken, and presents a calm, trustworthy face to the world. But behind his eyes, a different mind is at work, one shaped by anger, pride, and a secret philosophy. He follows a radical ideology that rejects law, order, and even God. He believes that strong men should rule and the weak should suffer. No one on board knows this, not yet. The voyage begins like any other. Days blur into weeks under a burning sun, across a relentlessly rolling sea. The men work until their hands bleed. At night, the ship groans and creaks, sounding like a living creature in pain. Below deck, passengers whisper stories of sea monsters, phantom storms, and ships that have vanished without a trace. But the real danger isn't in the water outside, it's walking the decks among them. Slowly, methodically, Cornelis studies the ship's ecosystem. He watches to see who is strong, who is weak, who drinks too much, and who complains the loudest. He learns where the weapons are stored. He pays close attention to the disgruntled sailormen who feel cheated by the company, who hate the officers, and who dream of a life with more than a meager sailor's pay. And then, he begins to talk. He speaks quietly, carefully, planting seeds of dissent. He whispers of unfair rules, of rich men growing richer while common men die. He speaks of freedom, of taking power for themselves. He validates their anger, making them feel chosen, special. A mutiny is being born, not with a roar of cannons, but with the poison of whispers. The captain can feel the tension rising. Arguments break out more frequently. Discipline starts to fray. The sheer length of the journey grinds everyone down, making small problems feel monumental. A missing food ration, a harsh order, a disrespectful glance, each one is a spark in a powder keg. Then comes the first real crack in the ship's social order. One night Cornelis and a group of his followers attack a young woman on board. She is brutally beaten, her life left hanging by a thread. The crime sends a shockwave of fear through the ship, but no one is properly punished. Order continues to slip through the captain's fingers. For Cornelis, this is confirmation. There are no real rules out here in the middle of the ocean. There is only strength. As the Batavia crosses the vast Indian Ocean, storms rise and fall. Mountainous waves crash over the deck. The masts scream under the strain. Men pray, some cry, and a few laugh like madmen on the edge of the world. The ocean tests the ship again and again, but it endures every storm, and that is the cruelest irony. The Batavia can survive the fury of the sea. It cannot, however, survive the evil within itself. On the morning of June 4, 1629, the ship is closing in on its destination. Land should be near. After so many months, spirits are finally beginning to lift. The worst, they believe, is almost over. Then, without any warning, a violent shudder rips through the vessel. Wood splinters with a deafening crack. The hull tears open. The Batavia has struck an uncharted reef off the coast of Western Australia. Sharp coral rips into the ship's belly like a predator's teeth. Icy water floods the lower decks. Chaos explodes. Cannons break free from their ropes, becoming multi-ton wrecking balls that crush anything and anyone in their path. Screams fill the air as the ship tilts violently to one side. People scramble desperately for the upper deck. Mothers clutch their children. Soldiers grab for weapons they will have no use for. Orders are shouted but are instantly swallowed by the panic. The ship is dying, but it doesn't sink immediately. The Batavia is caught fast on the reef, impaled. The relentless waves smash against her, breaking her apart piece by piece. The captain, still trying to maintain control, orders supplies and fresh water to be moved. He believes the ship can be freed, that order can be restored. Jeronimus Cornelis believes something else entirely. He believes this is his moment. Small boats are lowered into the churning water. The survivors are ferried to a string of nearby islands, low, flat strips of sand and rock that barely rise above the waves. There is no fresh water. There is no shelter. There is nothing but sharp rocks, screaming seabirds, and the endless roar of the ocean. Over 300 people have survived the wreck. For now, the captain makes a desperate decision. He takes a long boat and a small, loyal crew and sets off north, hoping to reach the Dutch outposts in the East Indies and bring back a rescue ship. It is a journey of thousands of miles in an open boat, a choice born of utter desperation. But it's the only one he sees. Cornelis stays behind, and the moment the captain's boat disappears over the horizon, everything changes. All authority vanishes with him. On those desolate, silent islands, surrounded by an endless expanse of water, Hieronymus Cornelis finally steps out of the shadows. He looks at the terrified survivors huddled on the beach, and he smiles. Because the ship is gone, the law is gone, and very soon mercy will be gone too. The real disaster has only just begun. When the captain left for help, something else rose from the ashes of the shipwreck. On the barren islands of the Abrolhos, survival twisted into something monstrous. The man at the center of it was Hieronymus Cornelis. He was an apothecary, a man of learning, but behind his calm eyes, a dark plan was forming. He didn't rush. He let the situation fester. He watched as the sun scorched their skin and thirst cracked their lips. He listened to the children cry until they had no more tears. The islands offered nothing, no trees, no fresh water, just sand, stone, and the shadow of death circling overhead. As desperation grew, people started looking to Cornelis for answers. This was exactly what he wanted. He stepped forward, a voice of reason in the chaos. He organized the survivors, gave out orders, and decided who ate first. It looked like leadership. It felt like hope, but it was a performance. Cornelis knew that if the captain survived his journey, rescue ships would return. And when they did, he needed to control not just the story, but the people who could tell it. The problem was simple. There were too many witnesses, too many mouths to feed, so he created a terrible new rule. He declared there wasn't enough food, and that for the strong to survive, the weak must be removed. He called it necessary. He even called it mercy. Some, broken by hardship, believed him. Others were simply too weak to argue. The first killings were quiet, disguised as accidents. A man sent to find water who never came back. A woman pushed into the sea, a sick child left in the sun. Cornelis offered condolences, but a pattern was emerging. Soon he gathered a group of loyal followers, men who enjoyed the taste of power, who had already crossed lines they couldn't uncross. He armed them with weapons salvaged from the wreck, swords, muskets, and knives. They became his enforcers. Night after night, screams echoed across the islands. The sound was carried away by the sea, but never far enough. People woke shaking, mothers clutching their children. Safety was a memory. The killings became open, brutal spectacles. Cornelis ordered entire families executed. Men were stabbed, women were drowned, and children were smashed against rocks. Their bodies were hidden or thrown to the sharks. Some begged for their lives. Some fought back. Others just accepted their fate in silence. Through it all, Cornelis watched, his face a mask of indifference. This wasn't murder to him. It was a cold, calculated form of control. He built a kingdom of fear so absolute that no one dared resist. He told his followers they were the chosen ones, that the weak deserved their fate. They were building a new world, he claimed, one ruled by strength alone. For a time, in that isolated hell, it worked. But on a nearby island, something unexpected was happening. A small group of soldiers, led by a man named Weeb Hayes, had been sent away by Cornelis weeks earlier. Cornelis had told them to search for water, but he really just wanted them to perish. They didn't. Instead, they found fresh water. They found food. And as survivors began to escape Cornelis's reign of terror, swimming across the treacherous channels or stealing small boats, Hayes began to understand the true horror unfolding just across the water. Terrified, injured people arrived with whispers of slaughter. Hayes listened, and he prepared for war. Using driftwood, coral, and whatever they could find, Hayes and his men built crude defenses. They sharpened sticks into spears. They trained. They waited. They knew Cornelis would not tolerate their existence. And he didn't. Cornelis sent his killers to wipe them out, expecting an easy victory. He badly underestimated desperate men with nothing left to lose. The first attack failed. The second one did too. Hayes fought with discipline and strategy, repelling Cornelis's thugs again and again. The killers, so used to terrorizing the weak, were shocked by organized resistance. The balance of power was beginning to shift. Back on his island, Cornelis grew paranoid. The resistance from Hayes's men made him frantic. He ordered more executions, faster and crueler, believing that more fear would restore his control. But it was having the opposite effect. His own followers started to doubt him. They began to fear their leader more than they feared the consequences of rescue. Then, one morning, a shape appeared on the horizon. Sails. A ship rescue had finally come. For the survivors, it was a miracle. For Cornelis, it was the end. He knew his time was up. In a final arrogant miscalculation, he went to Hayes's island to try and negotiate, perhaps to spin one last lie. But Hayes was done with words. He captured Cornelis on the spot. The tyrant was bound, disarmed, and silenced. For the first time since the wreck, the killing stopped. But the cost was staggering. Over 100 men, women, and children were dead, not from the unforgiving sea, but at the hands of their fellow survivors. The arrival of the rescue ship brought an end to the bloodshed, but justice was far from decided. The rescuers had no idea of the true story. And the final, terrible chapter of the Batavia was still to come. The rescue ship, the Sodom, dropped anchor near the Abrolhos Islands. Men in crisp, clean uniforms prepared to go ashore. They believed they were rescuing the survivors of a simple shipwreck. They were tragically, horrifyingly wrong. The moment their boots hit the sand, they knew this was no ordinary rescue. This was a place stained by unimaginable fear. What they found was a scene from a nightmare. Bodies lay half buried in the sand, their limbs askew, skeletons bleached white under the harsh Australian sun. Out of the makeshift huts and from behind desolate dunes, figures stumbled forward. They weren't just survivors, they were ghosts. Their eyes were hollow, vacant pits of trauma. Their voices, when they could speak, were thin, reedy whispers. Many couldn't speak at all, their silence a testament to the horrors they'd witnessed. The officers of the Sodom, led by Commander Pelsert, tried to piece together what had happened. The story didn't come out all at once, but in broken fragments, choked sobs and terrified glances. Slowly, a picture formed, darker than anything they could have conceived. This wasn't just about survival against the elements. This was about murder, cold, calculated executions. Children had been killed, entire families erased from existence. A reign of terror had descended upon this small community of castaways, and it was all orchestrated by one man. Geronimus Cornelis was brought before Pelsert in chains. He didn't struggle, he didn't shout, he looked almost bored. There was no begging for mercy, no denial of his actions. A chilling arrogance surrounded him, as if he believed he was entirely above judgment. Even now, standing in chains before his accusers, he saw himself not as a murderer but as a leader who had made hard choices. The rescuers were professional soldiers and sailors. They had seen death, they had faced the fury of the sea and the chaos of battle. But this was different. This was a profound, human evil. This was cruelty for its own sake, violence with no storm or wave to blame. It was a darkness that had sprung from within their own ranks. A trial was convened right there, on the blood-soaked islands. There was no grand courtroom, no polished wood or black robes, just the endless sand, the howling wind, and the crushing weight of the truth. One by one, the survivors came forward to bear witness. Their testimonies were a river of pain. Some collapsed mid-sentence, overwhelmed by the memories. Others trembled with a rage that had been suppressed for weeks under Cornelis's brutal rule. Weeb Hayes and his loyal band of soldiers described the pitched battles they fought against the mutineers, a desperate last stand for decency. The women who had been subjected to the worst of the depravity spoke of the nights of terror, the constant fear, the loss of their children, and the screams that echoed across the islands, screams that never seemed to stop. Throughout it all, Cornelis listened, his expression unchanged, and then it was his turn to speak. He didn't confess. He justified. He claimed his actions were necessary. He argued that the weak and the useless would have died anyway, that they were a drain on the limited resources. He declared that true order required sacrifice and that he, with his superior intellect and vision, was chosen to impose that order. He was a new kind of God in this new, lawless world. No one believed him. His philosophy was nothing more than a grotesque excuse for his own lust for power and cruelty. The verdict was swift and inevitable. Justice, in the 17th century, was as harsh as the environment. On the very islands where he had committed his atrocities, Geronimus Cornelis's hands were cut off. It was a symbolic punishment for the oaths he had broken and the pacts he had betrayed. Then, he was hanged. His closest followers, the brutal enforcers of his will, met similar fates. Some were executed alongside him. A few others were marooned, left on the mainland of the vast unknown continent of Australia, to face the wilderness alone, a punishment perhaps worse than death. The remaining survivors, a fraction of those who had made it off the sinking Batavia, were brought aboard the Sodom. They were finally safe. They were going home. They left the islands of horror behind them, but the memory was a passenger they could not leave ashore. It was seared into their minds. For the rest of their lives, many would carry the weight of what they had seen and suffered. Some would never speak of it again, burying the trauma deep inside. When the Sodom finally reached civilization in Batavia, now modern-day Jakarta, the full story began to spread. At first it was whispers in the port, then it became official reports. Soon it was a tale of absolute horror that shocked the Dutch Empire and the world. People struggled to comprehend how such barbarity could have occurred, not in some distant savage land, but among their own people, merchants, soldiers, families. The name Batavia became synonymous with more than just a shipwreck. It became a chilling cautionary tale. It was a stark reminder that the greatest danger to humanity doesn't always come from the storms of nature, but from the darkness within the human heart. It proved that evil doesn't need fangs or claws. It can wear the face of an educated, charismatic man. The Batavia disaster showed the world what happens when society breaks down, when law disappears, and when power goes unchecked. It revealed how quickly ordinary people, stripped of consequence, can become monsters. The ocean remained silent about the secrets it holds. Over time, the islands began to heal themselves. Waves washed the blood from the sand. The wind and shifting dunes covered the bones. But history does not forget. The story of the Batavia was not just a shipwreck. It was a mirror held up to human nature, and the reflection it showed was far more terrifying than any monster lurking in the depths of the sea.